What's up everyone, Joseph Parker here and you're watching Boxing Social.
This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social. I'm delighted to be joined by the not as scary as I feared, Kevin Barry. We're here today in London ahead of Joseph Parker's clash with Dillian Whyte next Saturday at the O2. How are you, Kevin?
Rob, I'm doing outstandingly well, and I'm not scary at all.
I wouldn't go that far. You're not as scary as maybe I'd have thought beforehand, but you are still quite scary. So, you're back here again. You're in the UK. We can't seem to get rid of you.
Look, we love being here in the UK. We've got a great fan base here. The people are tremendous. You know, we've done a big job building Joe's brand here, and he's very much supported, and we have a lot of love for Joseph Parker here at the moment. And so we need to take care of business next week against the very, very exciting, very talented Dillian Whyte to get more love for us here in the UK.
Joe's a very young guy, and he's already boxed Carlos Takam. He's already boxed Anthony Joshua. Obviously, he's about to box Dillian Whyte. He boxed Andy Ruiz Jr. How is that for you as a Alexander Dimitrenko, Kojanu, Huey Fury? So he's boxed a host of names for somebody so young and relatively inexperienced as a professional. What's it like for you as a trainer having somebody like Joe who's willing to tackle those chances head on?
Oh, look, I know how skillful my fighter is. And each of those fights, you know, we went into with a lot of confidence. We prepared well. I know that Joseph Parker has always been an extremely talented fighter, a fighter with excellent hand speed, excellent boxing skill. I love working with Joe. It's been an exciting 5.5 years, and I've watched him evolve and develop to the exciting fighter that he is right at the moment. And you know, the fight against Anthony Joshua that you mentioned, it was a fight that was one of the biggest fights in the world this year. You know, Joe showed great defense, he showed terrific movement, but his offense, it simply was dormant in that fight, and it's something that disappointed Joe, and it eats away at Joe, because like Joe made his name as an exciting fighter, a fighter who throws a lot of fast combinations, and those combinations just weren't there in the Joshua fight. And I think, you know, taking this fight against Dillian Whyte, a fighter who likes to engage, a fighter who likes to take two to give three, is going to make Joseph Parker fight, and will bring out the best of Joseph Parker.
Now, you mentioned the Anthony Joshua fight. Joseph wasn't able to get his offense off. I think general consensus, and I know it's something that you've mentioned and Joseph mentioned to me in our previous interview, is that you were quite impressed, pleasantly surprised, or unpleasantly surprised is probably the way to put it, with Anthony Joshua's offense, his control of distance and his jab. Was that not something you were expecting when you went in against the bigger guy?
No, look, you know, we looked at Joshua and all his previous fights, and it's a guy that he likes to engage. He likes to throw that cannon right hand, and he simply, you know, he tried to throw it early in the fight, and Joe caught him a couple of times, not on the chin but on the chest. And I think it was after that that Joshua thought, I'm going to put my right hand away, and he didn't engage as much as we were hoping he would, because for us, it was always fighting a 6'6" guy with a albatross 84-inch reach. It was our best chances were to get him to engage, because we had a lot of confidence and faith in Joe's chin, and we thought he had the faster hands, and if the two of them were engaging at the same time, it would improve our chances of being successful in that fight. But you know, hats off to Anthony Joshua. He fought a very, very disciplined, a very clever fight, a very skillful fight. The fact that he came in 6 kilograms lighter than his previous fight, the fact that he was content to move away from Joe and to keep the distance, he showed a skill set that we hadn't seen before.
Would you take that as a compliment? Him coming in 6 kilos lighter, boxing in that kind of, it was kind of Klitschko-esque, is kind of how I saw it, that keeping at the end of the jab, not really taking too many risks. Anthony Joshua is somebody who has historically been an exciting fighter as well, a knockout artist. Is that, I mean, it's probably a very small silver lining in hindsight, but is that a compliment to you and your team and Joseph?
Well, most definitely, and I think there was a lot of respect by both guys, and both guys fought overly cautious in that fight, and both gave each other too much respect. And I think the outcome was a fight that was a little bit uneventful, a fight that on paper should have been a real barn burner, and a fight that you know a lot of people expected a lot more fireworks. That just didn't really deliver that.
Now, Joseph is far too chilled and humble to mention what I'm about to mention to you, and you seem very much matter-of-factly. You're not a man about excuses. The referee didn't help matters in the last fight. I know that's something that you've voiced, or that your team has voiced in the build-up to the Dillian Whyte fight. Just tell me a little bit about how you felt the ref affected that Anthony Joshua fight and your concerns ahead of your fight with Dillian Whyte.
Well, look, we can't change the way the inability for the referee to do a proper job in the Anthony Joshua fight. But look, you know, firstly, let's look. It was one of the biggest fights in the world this year. First unification heavyweight fight in 8 years. You would think that a fight of that caliber would have one of the best referees in the world officiating it. You know, the referee we had just simply was out of his depth, and was a bad choice. What we're asking, we can't dwell on that. But what we are asking moving forward to the Dillian Whyte fight is that, you know, we need a referee that is up to the class and caliber of the fight. We're not asking for any favours. We're asking for a level playing field and a good referee.
Now, you mentioned the scale of the fight, getting to the referee. Was there any element of that with Joseph's performance, or was it just a tactical side of things? Did the occasion get to him at all, in your opinion?
No, I think you know Joe handled the occasion very, very well. And I said to a lot of people moving into that fight that Joe can control his emotions very well. That definitely wasn't anything to do with the outcome of the fight. It was in a nutshell, it was every time where we were able to close the distance, which was something that was very hard to do against a skillful performance by Joshua. When Joe did get in, the referee broke him up straight away, and Joe wasn't able to fight on the inside. So the occasion was something that I think Joe grew from, that he embraced the experience. And I think it'll make him a more mature, a more complete fighter moving forward.
When I asked this question to Joe, he was very matter-of-factly, typical of him as a person. But you're somebody with a long history in the sport. You've worked with some terrific fighters. You were an outstanding fighter yourself once upon a time.
Once upon a time? What do you mean?
Well,
I'm 90 years old.
I'm sure you can still throw down now, Kevin. In the immediate aftermath of Joseph losing his title, he told me that he was beaten on the night by the better man. He was very matter-of-factly about that. Told me that there was no change to him in his demeanour. It didn't affect him, as it were. You're somebody who sees him in the gym every day. You know him inside and out. You've worked with him for a long time. Did you notice any differences between him, good or bad, after he lost his title?
Oh, I tell you, the biggest thing that I noticed in the gym and having him living in my house with me in Vegas was the maturity. I feel that, you know, I've watched Joe evolve and grow up like a son in the last 5.5 years, but I've seen a whole new step up since his Joshua loss. Far more maturity, or much more maturity. His communication with me has gone to another level. Rather than me instructing all the time and him giving a little back, now we come back between sparring rounds, and it's, you know, we're him and I having a discussion about that round, about combinations and placements, and it's, as a trainer, I love it, you know, because I think it's going to make him a better fighter, a more complete fighter, and it enables him to see things a little differently. So, you know, I have seen a step up with the intensity, the drive. I know that there was something burning in his belly, even though he said to you, look, it didn't affect me at all. Joe's a very proud guy. He also knows that, you know, he made his name as an exciting fighter, a fighter who throws a lot of combinations, a fighter who lets his hands go. He didn't really let them go in the Joshua fight, and I think the style of Dillian Whyte and the style of Joseph Parker will come together in a very explosive fashion and make for a very exciting fight with a lot of punches and and a real test of the skill of both guys.
It seems to me in boxing these days, the O is overemphasized, as it were. If Joseph potentially took that loss to Anthony Joshua more negatively than it sounds like you're suggesting, would there have been tune-up fights? Would you have been more hesitant, as it were, to put him in with a Dillian Whyte in his next outing? Or now that you've seen that from him, you realise that, you know, I'm sure you know this anyway, but certainly on a person-by-person basis with Joseph, a loss isn't the end of the world. We're ready to continue. I've seen what I need from him in the gym to suggest that he's not only the same, but could possibly be better for the loss. Is that something that you've seen, and is that something that you considered?
Well, I honestly believe that no one wants to get beaten, and no one wants to suffer their first loss. But it's not how you lose; it's how you come back from that loss. And I've seen a bigger drive and more motivation in the gym, and I know that Joseph had no hesitation in taking this fight with Dillian Whyte, even though it was a very short camp that also involved, 34 hours of flying. He flew halfway around the world, and we had the whole first week of the camp was getting over the jet lag. But he wanted a fight that meant something. He wanted a challenge that would challenge him to bring out the best in him, and we believe that we've got that in Dillian Whyte. And we feel very, very fortunate to have this fight, and we're going to make the most of it.
Just going back to your relationship with Joseph, your working relationship has now been 5.5 years. He told me that when he first came to you, he was very shy. He's not a dancing on the tables entertainer. Certainly not from what I've seen, but he still has that shy element, that reserved element to him. How have you seen him progress, not only as a fighter but as a person in those 5.5 years?
Well, I think we've all seen him as a fighter, how far he's come. But almost like a surrogate father, I've watched him grow as a man. He now has 2 daughters, and my wife and I and my family, we've all shared in that with him. And the person that he's become he's a wonderful human being, and it gives me great satisfaction and delight to watch the man that he has evolved into.
As a fighter, do you remember the first time that you saw Joseph Parker box?
Well, let's remember, Joe lives in New Zealand. I live in Las Vegas, and I've been there for 15 years now. So I never actually watched him fight live in the amateurs. My younger brother Brian, who's part of my corner team, watched him fight 2 or 3 times and had several conversations with Joe before I ever met Joe. In fact, Brian had sort of said to me, you guys will get on really well. I was sort of sounding Brian out, what sort of a guy is he? Do you think we'll have some chemistry? And he goes, you'll love this guy, and I think the first couple of times I worked with him, I realized that we were going to have something special.
Tell me a little bit about that chemistry, because as I mentioned at the very start of this, you're becoming scarier, less scary by the second. Don't worry.
Do you want me to smash this glass on the table?
No, you're still scary enough, but just less scary by the second. But that being said, I mean, you strike me as somebody who is no nonsense. You're straight down the middle, a hard taskmaster, I'd imagine. Joseph is somebody who is on this very chilled vibe. How do you guys work together in the gym? Is it a case of opposites attracting? Do you feel that your style gets the best out of him? I mean, I'm sure you do feel that, but do you think that kind of makeup, that DNA, blends well together for you two?
Well, I think, our chemistry is, like it started to be, right from the get-go, was more of a respect thing, that Joe knew what I had done as a fighter, he knew what I had done as a trainer, and he was going to make the most of this association, and then it was up to us to prove that we could gel together as a team, and fight by fight we became a closer unit, and Joe could see himself developing, improving as a fighter, and he knew that it was the right chemistry and the right combination for him.
In the modern era of boxing, it seems like day by day the emphasis on sports science, these newfangled training methods are coming out of the woodworks. Trainers are getting younger. Shane McGuigan, Ben Davison. You strike me as someone who's very much old school, in the most respectful way possible.
I'm one of the trainers that's getting older.
I said you're old school. We're all getting older. With that in mind, have you found that your role as a trainer, you've had to adapt? Do you still hark back to your own training methods, or is it very much a case of you do things so differently now, or is it kind of a blend between the two?
Look, there are some things I do, like for instance, like my coaching method is there is no substitute for sound fundamentals. It doesn't matter which generation you're in, okay? But I am very, very open to all training methods, and like what worked for one fighter won't work for another fighter, and we're always trying different things to make that fighter the best he can possibly be. And you know, if you know, we do a wide range of things from dry needling to neuromuscular work to deep tissue work to yoga to mental work. These are all things that are different from the nuts and bolts of your training, your boxing sessions, your sparring, your strength and conditioning. You know, so we're always looking at new methods. Joe does a lot of cryotherapy with the ice. You know, so it's what works for that fighter. And I'm very open-minded. You know, it's never ever about you do it my way. It's what works best for Joe.
Okay, well, just finally, because I do appreciate your time this morning, I see by your notepad you're very, very busy, so thank you very much for your time. If you will, just before we go, why don't you tell Boxing Social and boxing fans around the world why you feel that Joseph Parker will be successful when he faces Dillian Whyte, and give them a reason to tune in. Sell it to me, Kevin.
Oh, hey, don't put me under pressure, will you? Hey, look, I tell you what, you know, when you look at this fight on paper, you have Joseph Parker, 24-1, 18 KOs. Dillian Whyte, 23-1, 17 KOs. Both guys ranked in the world top 5. Dillian Whyte, 1 with the WBC, 2 with the WBO, 4 with the IBF, putting it all on the line against a guy who's only suffered one loss, Joseph Parker, losing a 12-round decision to Anthony Joshua. This fight is about redemption for Joseph Parker, and this fight is about my life and my career for Dillian Whyte. Both guys have so much to gain and so much to lose. This fight, the style of both guys, will be one of the most exciting fights in the UK, if not the world, this year. This is a heavyweight fight that people will want to see.
Very scary, but sold it very well. Very good. Okay, well, Kevin Barry, always a pleasure catching up with you. One of these days we're going to do an interview and you're just going to seem like a cuddly teddy bear to me. You're going to have to chin me. But thank you very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Always a pleasure catching up with you and Joseph Parker. Look forward to catching up with you next week ahead of the fight next Saturday at the O2.
My pleasure. It's great to see you.
Thanks, mate. That was great.